Right, this is a video to show you my new Oxford hot grips, which I have fitted to my Kawasaki ZR7S or Kawasaki ZR750, depending on what you want to call the bike. They were very easy to fit. That's the first thing I've got to say about them. Incredibly easy to fit. Everything that you need, or pretty much everything that you need, came in the pack. I got these particular ones for £50, $49.99 from eBay, from a seller called MSG Bike Deals, and they came pretty quickly, and they're not the light version. They are the full-on, I suppose, top of the range version that you can get. And the first thing that I have to say is that they work perfectly, really well. In terms of installing them, it really couldn't be simpler. The first thing you do is you take off your bar end. As you can see inside there, it's just an Allen bolt. I think it's 5.5 mil Allen bolt. You unscrew that, then the bar end comes off, and then your original grips. Now, this was the part that I was dreading, because everyone has said that the taking off of the grips is the most difficult part, but I don't know whether I was just very lucky, but the old grips came off very easily. What I would suggest, though, to make sure your grips come off easily, is to slide a very thin bladed screwdriver carefully along the length inside the grip underneath your old grip, and just give it a little wiggle around, and that would release any of the glue that was holding your previous grip in place. And what I actually did then was I peeled back the old grip only to around there, and it just gave just that little bit extra purchase to be able to pull the grip off. But like I say, the old grips came off very easily, so I was pleased with that, and it all came off pretty clean. Obviously there'll be glue residue from your old grips, so you just need to clean that off. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. What Oxford recommend is that you dry fit the grips first before you start, obviously before you glue them in place, just to make sure that they're suitable for your bike. The throttle grip has a slightly larger diameter than the left hand side grip, just because it has the throttle housing in there as well. So that was pretty straightforward. I just simply slid these on first of all, quite a tight fit, just to make sure that they did actually go on. So I did the throttle one and that one, and once I was satisfied with that, I took them off. Also, what Oxford recommend is that you do like a basic test run on the grips before you fit them properly, and that involves connecting up the power supply to your bike's battery, which obviously on most models is under the seat, and that's just basically just to test the grips to make sure they do actually heat up and work as expected. I suppose Oxford's logic there is they don't want people sending back grips that don't work, covered in glue and everything else. So once you've got that bit done, that's all straightforward. So yeah, so you basically slide the grips on both sides, and then the grips have wires coming from them. Now, the thing to remember with the throttle one here is that the throttle one moves. So you've got the closed position there, and then you've got the open position there, so you do have to take that into account in terms of operation of your brake lever. As you can see here, with the throttle closed, the brake lever's got no chance of hitting that, so that's never going to be an issue there. But you do have to bear that in mind where your closed position is going to be, so don't just put the grips on in what you feel is the most convenient place. You've got to take into account this quite large piece of rubber here and make sure it doesn't interfere with the brake lever. Same again on the clutch side. Of course on this side this is fixed, this is just glued in place, and of course this grip doesn't move, so once you've chosen your position there, once again just make sure that the clutch moves fully in, and as you can see I've got a good clearance there, so that's not an issue. So once you put the grips on, you'll see the wires coming from the grip here and on that side, and you basically then have a connector wire which you can see here, and it's like T-shaped. So basically if you imagine a T-shape, either ends of the top of the T, that's where the two grips plug into, and then the bottom part of the T then runs down underneath the bike. When I say underneath the bike, underneath the fuel tank I routed mine. Let's see if I can get a shot of that. No, quite tricky to see now. Anyway, I routed it down under the fuel tank, and basically it went all the way under here. You might just be able to see it coming down just a little bit there, and that went all the way through to the battery end. On the other side, this is the control switch. Now you've got a couple of mounting options here. You can either mount the control switch, as I've done, using the black bracket which came in the box. Lucky again, I mean obviously they try and accommodate all different types of fitments, but I was lucky that this particular bracket that comes supplied with the grips just basically fitted onto the clutch cable assembly, the clutch lever assembly rather. They even supply slightly longer bolts for you to secure that on, and so it's very simple. And then the control panel is secured to this using 2 screws on the backing plate just there. You can, if you didn't want it there, you can put the control panel, they provide you with like adhesive pads, and you could put the control panel say on your fairing there, just stuck down, and then route your wire through to the back as well. As you can see, I've used a cable grip just here, cable tie rather, just to thread it through. And once again you can see that I routed it under the fuel tank. That goes all the way under the fuel tank. You might just be able to see it, it's probably a little bit dark actually, and that goes all the way through. So here we've got then the cables that came from the grip, from the T-shaped cable, they came from the grip, and that's from the control unit. The control unit then plugs into the control box via this DIN plug just here. Very easy to separate. What I've done though is I've just put insulating tape over the join there, simply because my bike's going to be out over the winter. It is going to be covered at night, but of course there's going to be moist air and quite a damp environment, so anything that I can do to reduce the amount of moisture getting into the connections. Actually, on the subject of that, Oxford also recommend these connectors here. These are actually white plug-in connectors that plug in the grips to connect to the battery, and then I've just covered them with quite a bit of insulating tape, just to once again protect them from the elements, protect the contacts from the elements. Also, before I plugged them all in, I just put a little bit of copper slip, copper grease on the connectors as well, just to reduce the chance of corrosion over the winter months. And then yeah, so coming back here, they then connect to the control box here, and the control box then has two wires coming off it. It really couldn't be more simple. Two wires, and one of the wires goes to the negative terminal of the battery there, and the other wire, you've guessed it, goes to the positive terminal of the battery there. They're ring connectors, so all you have to do is just simply unscrew the battery connector there, thread the screw through the ring connector, and then screw it back onto your battery. Once again, put in a small amount of copper grease, copper slip on there, just to prevent corrosion of the terminals. And that's that. And then just use a cable tie to secure it to the frame there, and there's a cable tie further back securing the this cable to the frame there. I suppose the most important thing is, I suppose what you could be tempted to do when you fit these is just drag all the cables through under the tank, under the fuel tank, so you've got the bulk of the cables here, which is great, as I've done, but just bear in mind you've got to take into account that you've got enough slack for when you turn the handlebars. You don't want those cables too tight, so when you turn the handlebars it then causes an issue. So that's that. Then in terms of the operation of the grips, it really couldn't be more simple. You've got an on-off button there, just one press, you get the little LED to tell you that the unit's on, and then it tells you what percentage power it's at. That's at 30%. Then I use the plus or minus here, so you got 40%, 75% or 100%, and you can just adjust that accordingly. And whilst the unit's on, if you quickly press this button, the on-off button, but not fully press it, it automatically then dips straight down to the lowest setting. So I suppose they've put that on because obviously once you've got gloves on and you're riding along, you're not going to have quite as much feel, and of course with all the noise and what have you and vibration, you might not feel the actual click, and you don't really want to be looking for the switch when you're riding along. But just a brief press of the switch, if the grips are getting too hot, we'll just dip it down to the lowest setting. It won't turn them off, but at least your hands won't start to burn. I can confirm that they do actually get very, very hot, certainly on the 100% setting, and so I presume you put them on the highest setting just to get them started off, and then just dip it down to whatever feels most comfortable once you're riding along. And that's that. I mean, in terms of difficulty, what I would say is that if you're good at putting together flat pack furniture, that kind of thing, just following pretty basic instructions, this is well within your capabilities. And strangely enough, it wasn't the fitting of the grips which took up all of my time. Let me just turn this off before I forget, because as you can see, I've wired this straight to the battery on the bike. I haven't done it via the ignition or anything like that, so you do have to remember to be turning these off. They do have a safety cutout where if you do leave them on, it's supposed to automatically turn off if the battery voltage drops below, I think it's 11 volts, something like that, but I personally wouldn't take a chance with that. So but I'm pretty good at remembering those sort of things. Just trying to think if there is anything else. Yeah, what I was saying was, in terms of how long it takes to fit, I actually found the tidying up of the cables and just making sure everything was okay was the thing that took the longest, rather than the actual fitting of the grips and what have you. Oh yeah, when you wet fit the grips using the glue, it comes supplied with super glue, so you just basically put loads and loads of super glue around the actual handlebar underneath where the grip's going to go, and whilst it's still wet you need to do it nice and quick, just basically manoeuvre the handlebars on. Now with this, with the left hand one, that's great because you can basically twist it to your heart's content to get it correct in position. The throttle one was a little bit different because you've got to take into account the throttle assembly underneath, so you can't be quite as rough getting that on. And what I found was, once I'd actually fitted it, I had quite a lot of free play in the throttle before the throttle would work. So all I did with that then was just simply adjust the throttle free play adjuster there. So now the throttle free play is it's not too excessive, and basically the throttle works pretty much as soon as I turn it. So that's that. So yeah, so if you're reasonably logical and not even that mechanically minded, I suppose the important thing is when you're routing the cables not to have them touching any really hot parts of the engine, but mine are nicely high up out of the way here. That's never going to be an issue here, and I've just got this area here to just try and sort out and decide what to do with the excess wires and stuff. I'm going to put the control box there. It says in the instructions to have the control box at least 1 inch away from battery terminal, so I've comfortably got that. I'm not sure I'll do that much more with it really. I'll just put the seat back on and job's a good one really. So I hope that's been helpful, and I'm sure when you get around to doing it yourself you'll find that it wasn't quite as daunting as you might have thought. I certainly found it easy, and I'm no mechanic by any stretch. So there we go. Thanks for watching, and I hope you find that useful.